gotta dream it, like you mean it. Embrace the vision, no need to conceal it. Feeling masterpiece, the colors so bright. Aim for the stars, reach new heights. Align your life, don't let it design you. Chase your dreams, make them all come true. Dance to the rhythm, move with the beat. You're the creator, get up on your feet. Then you gotta dream it, like you mean it. Embrace the vision, no need to conceal it. Daydream masterpiece, the colors so bright. Aim for the stars, reach new heights. Design your life, don't let it design you. Chase your dreams, make them all come true. Dance to the rhythm, move with the beat. You're the creator, get up on your feet.
Peace, peace, peace. What's happening? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Design Your Life, the podcast where we expose you to people who have successfully and are successfully designing their lives around the things that they're passionate about, the things that they love, their goals, their dreams. And in my estimation, in my most humble opinion, designing your life is the greatest gift that you can give yourself. The greatest gift that you could possibly give yourself is to design life around the things that you enjoy. And the purpose of this podcast is to expose you to people who are not only doing it, but to also hear from them and hopefully get some tips and some jewels that you can utilize to hopefully design your life. And today I'm excited because I have a friend of mine here. We're in his beautiful office here in Bakersfield. And we're going to get into it, but I've got to introduce him the right way. He's a husband, father, Cum Laude, UC San Diego, Magna Cum Laude, USD School of Law, CEO of Bynum Associates, CEO of the Blvd, attorney at law, mentor, athlete. Many of you guys don't know this guy has some basketball game in him. named to the 20 under 40 list by the Bakersfield Californian. Wonderful regular guy. The outstanding David Bynum Esquire.
Thank you so much. Wow,
Yeah.
That was more than I deserve, especially the basketball part.
No. Well, we're athletes in our minds forever.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
our bodies don't always cooperate, if you will. But yeah, thank you for sitting down with me, Dave. I really appreciate it. And the first thing I want to do is I want to take it back to the beginning, like where you grew up, what was your childhood like, you know, what did it feel like, smell like where you grew up?
Yeah, so I grew up in Bakersfield, born and raised. I was kind of an East Side guy. Grew up on El Cerrito Street. Had a nice neighborhood experience with kids, you know, I could play with down the street.
Yeah.
And that's probably the basketball hoop in the driveway.
Right.
Those were kind of the foundational, you know, elements of my childhood, is just walking back and forth to the friend's house and running around the neighborhood, and definitely that basketball hoop in the driveway with my brother and his friends.
Yeah, I know for me it wasn't the basketball court wasn't in the back. It was around the corner at the playground. I spent hours pretty much every day there, and that was just like the core of kind of like just childhood and growing up. What did your parents do?
So growing up, my mom worked for the Social Security Administration, and my dad was an appraiser. And about the time that I was born, he was transitioning into the company that I'm CEO of now, Bynum Inc., which started off doing real estate appraisal, and then kind of he merged into doing real estate development and developing commercial buildings and doing property management. So he was getting into that, and then my mom stopped working once that started going, although she continued to work at the family company for a while. So she worked off and on. She went back to work when I hit high school, and was the head of a nonprofit organization called Youth Connection.
Okay.
That gave like camp opportunities, special one-off opportunities to disadvantaged youth, trying to get them out of their situations for opportunities they might not otherwise have had.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So when you were a kid, I know you mentioned basketball, but what did you enjoy not only doing, but did you dream? What did you dream about?
Man, when I was a kid, it was comedy, basketball, and even at a young age, I thought, okay, I'm not gonna be a basketball player, but I thought about coaching, being a referee,
Okay.
something around the game.
Yeah.
That was when I was real young, and I think that gave way to more practical ambitions as I got into high school and things like that.
You said comedy?
Comedy, yeah. So, comedy's always been a passion of mine.
Okay.
And the way I've expressed that in the last 5 years is booking comedy shows at Timber Brewing Company. I brought in national acts, and there's a lot of comedy going on in town now, but at that time, there wasn't
Okay.
much going on. So that was a way for me to kind of give something of the arts to Bakersfield that was meaningful to me, and to have my fingers in a part of the world that was of interest to me, but without making it my career.
Right.
I would book one show a month, and I would take no money out of the show. I would just, instead of taking a promoter's cut, I would pay for the best comedian we could get, kind of as a point of pride. To have, that comedian come to Timber Brewing Company, to Bakersfield at a small venue where people could experience it in a 300-person room. So
that's awesome. Who was the comedian? So because I don't know, I think I'm probably the funniest. At least I think I'm the funniest in my immediate family. But we had a lot of jokes, and there was a lot of like music and things like that growing up. But in your family, because you say comedy, was there someone like, who was the comedian or who was the funny person?
That's definitely me.
Okay.
But my grandparents were both very funny.
Got it.
Both my grandpas, and so I think I take that from them. And then my mom's got a great sense of humor. My dad's pretty stoic.
Okay.
But my mom's a funny lady and likes to joke around. So I think I get a lot of that from her.
Gotcha.
And then I'm as a middle child, so trying to make people laugh. You're just looking for what can I bring to the equation to get some attention. So that was my approach. Tried stand up a very little bit, but not until I was in my career. And I quickly found out, it doesn't work well to be an attorney and a CEO and doing comedy. And so gave that up. Also, like anything, I think to be really successful in that game, you got to start at 15. We actually have a guy from here named Bruce Gray, who I just booked last year to come back to Timber. And he's at the Comedy Store. He's kind of past at the Comedy Store, where he's one of those guys. I kind of call that making the pros. Like he's in the NBA of comedy, and
nice.
I watched him do it, so that was a cool thing for me to see him from like open mic to moving to LA and like sleeping on couches and taking everything he could get to getting his shot, making it. So that's been a fun passion of mine that I've been able to partake in and have as part of my life, but without trying to full-time pursue it professionally in a way that probably would have cut off me having a family life the way that I wanted to have it. And so
So real quickly, as a kid, did you have specific goals when you were a kid, or did that stuff kind of come later on in life?
Yeah, I would say the intentionality when I was a kid was, get through college. And looking back now and having children, one thing I'm trying to instill in them is like make your college education meaningful. My thing was work hard at high school, get in the best college I can, go to the best college I can. But I wasn't career driven at that time. I got a degree in what's called management science, which to me it was like a business degree, but not really. I didn't even really understand the degree that well that I signed up for. As a 17-year-old kid, I was young for my class when I went to college.
That's where we're going. So before you go to college, I want to know who you were in high school.
Who I was in high school.
Like, were you like, because you mentioned sports, you mentioned comedy. So who were you personality-wise in high school?
Yeah, I was kind of definitely a comedic character. You know, I think I got bored in class a lot, and I don't know if I was class clown, because I definitely was respectful of teachers and never got in that much trouble, but I think my sense of humor was my primary tool to attract friends and romantic interests. And so, and in the meantime, it was, you know, excel in athletics, excel in academics.
Okay.
So that was, you know, just expected in my household. Yeah. And, you know, we talk about basketball.
Is that where Bynum 23? Is that
Garces? No. That was just a gift from. So I played at guard. My brother was 6'5".
Oh wow.
He was the captain of the you know, basketball team, and they were very successful. And he was at. And then I was 5'11", and by sophomore year I was on the bench, and I didn't think I was getting off. Yeah. So I decided I was going to switch to swimming. Okay. And that became my sport. I became, you know, captain of the swim team, and excelled in swimming there. Swam 51 weeks a year. Swimming, I was brokenhearted when I, you know, admitted to myself, like, I don't have the skill set to excel at basketball. I don't have what some of these other guys have. Yeah. And so to give that up, I wanted to move into something where, and I also felt a little bit like, you know, with basketball, it's always like, well, I got intangibles, you know, I hustle on D, I got things that you can kid yourself with that, or maybe it's true, but like, you know, at that time I definitely believed I had some things that, you know, weren't being seen. Yeah. And so I wanted to move to a sport where it was like, hey, your time's your time. No one can deny you that. Right. No one can say, hey, you're starting, or you're not starting, or you're right in the pine. It's completely objective. So that was kind of my response, and something I knew, hey, with swimming, like, you definitely have genetic abilities that are going to cap out where you can get, but you can also, you know, just like with any aerobic sport, just like put the hours in and just beat a lot of people by
just technique
and just hours in the pool, just getting your aerobic fitness in incredible shape. So that's what I did to excel, you know, athletically. So I was captain of the swim team. I did kind of student government. Okay. That was just kind of this kind of leadership expectation that came from my household. And so, yeah, I pursued that all 4 years. I ran all 4 years, lost my freshman year, and then I was like vice president of the class and that stuff. And so I'd say between that, swimming, and academics, that was kind of my world in high school. And it was just about getting to the next level and figuring out
what was next.
Yeah, finding the best college experience I could find.
I joke with my friends, because then I played basketball in high school. I joke with my friends that if I was 6'5", they would know me, but I wouldn't know them.
It's definitely.
So the size, you can't, you know, 6'5", 5'9", it's nothing you can do. You can't teach somebody to be tall, big, and strong. So
my brother had a better shot than me too, so that was just insult to injury. I just, you know.
Probably beat up. And this is your older brother or younger brother?
My older brother.
Older brother, okay.
And it's interesting, like, who knows, had I not seen the level of success and set my expectation, because I see like that Dame Lillard commercial where he's like, you know, never getting to play, and he just works his butt off and gets there. And, I'm like, man, maybe I just gave up too easily, because I was looking at my brother and saying, hey, maybe I should expect to succeed the way he succeeds. Yeah. Well, maybe success for me was like being the seventh man or something. Which when I quit, my varsity coach was like, hey, you know, I see you being seventh man on the varsity team. Right. And I was just like, that's not good enough for me.
Yeah. Well, you
And-
know what? One thing I will say, I mean, because it can go both ways. So you maybe gave up too early, but I also see the expectation of excelling at a high level and not settling. So there's something to be said about that, but there's also something to be said about, just the love. I just loved it. I loved it enough to just continue to put the hours in. And
I definitely loved it more than swimming, and so that was something that, that I missed out on, is playing a game I love. But it can strip the love out of you real quick when you're not getting to participate in the way you think you should. And then I had friends who were very good who were also just, I'd be watching the game. It turned out my senior year, our team was trash.
Okay.
And I was watching guys I knew were very good sitting the bench, and so so I don't know. I mean, ultimately, there's areas where you can design your own fate, and there's areas where you can't. And I think now there's more of an opportunity, even if you're in high school, to like go hoop with like a Dignity Health at Kyle's place.
Yeah. There's so many more opportunities now.
Just to play the game.
To just play the game. Bakersfield is a little bit different just because of the environment, and outside it's really hot. But there's so many, gyms and programs and, club teams and all that stuff. So there's definitely opportunities to play, which is a whole nother thing, because some of these kids, they have no idea what they have. And, we talk about entitlement and all that kind of stuff. So I don't want to go too far. I do want to know, why did you choose management science?
So, I had a vague sense from watching my dad that I wanted to get into business.
Okay.
And that was a good avenue for me. So when I applied to colleges, I basically, decided I'm not going to pay for private college. We've got a great UC system. At that time, it was very affordable. So I applied to 5 UCs. UC San Diego was the best one I got into. So I went to UC San Diego, and that's the closest thing they had to like a business degree there.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I signed up for, and just thought that was kind of the first step. It turns out, like in hindsight, it's like it wasn't a true business program. It had like a little bit of industrial engineering in it.
Yeah.
And it had a lot of econ in it. And the kids that I think really get it now are the kids I talk to that are like, no, I picked my school because of the program, not I picked my school because it ranked high, and then I went to the program. Yeah. So I think I understand. And some of that comes from, my parents were first generation college. So like they, my dad told me when he went to school, like Bakersfield College, CSUB, Stanford, these were all the same things in his mind, in his household. It was just like, college is college. Yeah. No one was really like.
It wasn't tiered out.
Exactly. Yeah. It was just like, hey, the goal is to get to college. Yeah. And so, he went to North High. And so I've always found that interesting because I was always so much, I was always, in my time, it was like the U.S. News Top 100 ratings. You're looking at those. And, and so I picked based on that. But now I'd really encourage everyone to, find the program that fits what you want to do and how you want to learn, and then go at it that way. But that's something someone's going to have to be intentional with telling you about when you're 15, 16 and thinking about this stuff. And sometimes, I was just, I was immature. At 17, I was still a young guy and still just thinking, okay, I'll just keep moving, keep doing my thing, try to get good grades, let that lead into the next opportunity. Yeah.
Well, that's a part of why I wanted to do this, because a lot of kids, 15, 16, 17, you're not really sure what you want to do. Depending on where you come from, you may not have someone, a first generation, second generation, or anyone to really guide you. And, I'll ask you about self-reflection a little bit later, but, part of this is taking a look behind the curtain of people who've done it and, call it your virtual mentor, if you will. But it's important to get those messages. What were those first freshman semesters like?
Man, it was very tough for me. Lived in Bakersfield my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Went to private school, Heritage Academy, and then Garces. So very small schools to a secular university of 30 to 40,000 undergrads.
Mm-hmm.
And I was 17.
Yeah.
Homesick, dealing with some depression that was really, I knew I had depression, but I wasn't dealing with it.
Yeah. It's not something that people was talking about.
No, it wasn't something my family talked about. It wasn't something like, now there's so much, you have athletes talking about it. You have, back then it was just kind of like something you knew like existed and I knew had some like family history of it because but mentioned maybe like one time like, oh, like so-and-so family member, try to take their life, and so you're like, oh, but as a kid, I didn't really know what to do with that.
Yeah.
So, I'd say most of my freshman year was just kind of like struggling with trying to figure that out, deal with some homesickness issues.
Yeah.
You live in with the dorms are overcrowded, so I had a 2-bedroom apartment with 5 guys, which I think it's much worse now. But you're like, you got people in your living space, like, so academically it was very tough. Mm-hmm. Going from a classroom with 20 kids to like a calculus class with a guy who speaks broken English and it's 300 kids.
Yeah.
And you're used to getting, just killing it, all A's. And, like, they were grading on the curve, but I was getting tests back like 30%. And I was like, what the? You just freak out. You're like, I never, 30%. Like, I've never done below, like, 85, anything in my life. So definitely, like, a shock from that standpoint. And also, I decided not to swim in college. I wasn't,
because you were the captain of the swim team.
As a captain, and I swam club, and almost everyone I swam club with went on to swim in college because I was in a high level club. I could have swam in college, but definitely the world was not missing anything by me not having swam in college.
I have a feeling that this guy is like being hard on himself. I know he wants to be basically like the Babe Ruth, Michael Jordan of everything, but. I don't know.
Yeah, and honestly, swimming's a grind. So I was kind of ready for a break from that.
Okay.
But I think, how did I fill my time?
Mm-hmm.
So the first couple quarters, I didn't have a job.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to class, and I had a little bit too much free time on my hands, honestly.
Okay.
And that was a big lesson from that period of my life, which was like, I do best when I'm busy.
Okay.
So I have to keep my plate full to kind of have a sense of satisfaction.
Okay, so maybe that answers partially this next question, which is, and I want to say in 2002, when you were still an undergrad, you were working for Bynum and Associates. So how did you balance that, or is that what you basically needed?
Well, so I was. Summers, I would come back and do like maintenance, or work in the office. And my dad was very good. My dad and I have always talked business, so I was on the phone with him all the time, kind of understanding what's going on and staying abreast of what he was doing. And so I think summers was mainly where I was like, fully, invested in working here, but staying abreast of everything at the same time. And then really in college, I started, I took a writing job for a guy that was developing websites. I took a writing job at the school, newspaper.
Okay.
So for whatever reason, I knew I liked writing, and I had a little bit of a comedic voice. I got to do editorials for the newspaper, so that was, again, kind of a way of playing into that interest and giving myself something to do, something to be part of, and something to feel proud of and learn. So I did a lot of film reviews too, and I studied some film in college, so that was another aspect of just an interest that I was able to pursue while I was at college that was kind of away from my main academic regime.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So at some point, you kind of turned it around. 'Cause I know you said initially you was struggling 30% and all that. Like, what do you believe? I mean, and again, speaking for people who are about to go into that space, like, what do you believe made you a good student?
Really, more than anything, effort and not wanting to accept failure.
Yeah.
So, you may find yourself in a situation where you've always succeeded, and now you're not succeeding. Now you're going to have to go meet with the professor, meet with the TAs. There were, I actually went and got outside tutoring.
Okay.
From this guy that actually called the econ tutor at UC San Diego. He was a PhD student who basically, helped kids in the econ department get through classes they were struggling with. So it was just about, okay, I'm not meeting my expectations. What am I going to need to do to meet my expectations?
Yeah.
And the expectations at that point, by freshman, sophomore year, I was thinking, okay, I want to go, I think I want to go work in the family business. And I was talking to my dad, and he was kind of saying, well, you need to bring something to the table. So, he started telling me to think about an MBA or a law degree. Okay. And so for either one of those, that means, okay, I'm applying to a program, next step. And so you want to have good grades. You want to be successful to, be successful at getting into whatever program you want. So that's kind of where my mind was at that freshman, sophomore year. And, okay, I got to succeed so I can do this next thing. And not only come back here, but come back here and contribute something. I ultimately decided I liked law because I actually did get a book and read the difference between an MBA and law school and what the experiences would be like. Okay. And that's how I made my decision. Okay, I'm going to pursue law. Knew I really never wanted to be like a full-time, 20, 30-year attorney. But thought, okay, the education's good. I'll practice for a while. I'll learn what I can, and I'll take that with me into the company and have that skill set be unique from my dad's, which is, appraisal and development background.
So you actually, just so this doesn't go over everyone's head, you actually, before you decided to go into law, you read about the differences between MBA and law, and that helped basically make your decision, help you make the decision?
Yeah. Obviously, I talked to some attorneys. I watched some movies. I read a book called 1L about this guy's first year experience at Harvard Law back in the day. So just kind of started informing myself in those ways, and I just definitely felt like academics was something I could excel at, and so I wanted to continue down that path to give myself more opportunities.
There you go. So what was so after law school, what was the first move out of law school?
So I was working so it kind of is your second year of law school, you're looking for jobs. You're applying for different law firms to kind of figure out where you're going to be when you get out. And I had accepted a job at a firm in La Jolla. Okay. So, was kind of signed up there. Also had a job offer in Bakersfield with a firm that were family friends and a place where I'd work during one of the summers.
Bakersfield, San Diego, family, San Diego. Okay.
Yeah. So it's actually, interesting. I kind of had that sense that and La Jolla is kind of anonymous. It was kind of like that basketball swimming thing again, where it was like, hey, you have a job here. You're just another guy. You're just a resume on the desk. They could treat you like dirt, and they've got 30 more resumes on their desk. Things have changed drastically since then. They're not enough lawyers now, so it's like employment is a different thing. But back then, it was like just to have a job anywhere in San Diego, coming out of the University of San Diego Law School was a good thing, because you had kids from Stanford, Harvard, every school out there trying to come achieve a job in San Diego. So it was stiff competition. But, ultimately felt like just anonymous, just a face in the crowd there, is where back in Bakersfield I was, kind of, it's a community. It's a community where people. I never felt, San Diego's a big place, and it's people come and go from it frequently, and there's, I think I missed that sense of community in Bakersfield. My brother was here, and was talking about having kids, so I was kind of like, well, I want to go, be an uncle. Yeah. I'd just gotten out of a long relationship that was kind of like, felt like a fresh start was probably the right thing. Yeah. So I decided to move back to Bakersfield and work here, and really have not regretted that at all. I enjoy Bakersfield a lot. I think Bakersfield gets a bad rap. I think it's a great place to live and raise your kids and enjoy life. I wouldn't say the simple life, because it's a city, but
it's different.
It's definitely different than it's like LA. I could never do LA. Yeah. And San Diego, I know what life looks like there for professionals. It's the work week's longer, the commute's longer, the house is more expensive. Yeah. Like you're just having to chase it a little bit harder. And it's 70, 74 every day. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no, I definitely enjoy my time in San Diego. But I know what you're saying, because I come from Philadelphia, and San Diego was a different type of a city than Philadelphia. But, when I left years later, my sister had a son, and that's one of the sore spots, not being in Philly for him and with him. And, he's 7 now, so that part I do miss. So I totally get that part of it, and just kind of the community, the familiarity, and, just, home. I mean, you can't beat that home cooking, that's for sure. Yeah. So around like 2012, I believe it was, is when you opened your practice?
Yeah, so I did 5 years with the firm. And
why was that the right time?
I was starting to understand I had some kind of more entrepreneurial interests. It was just a time where I felt like I had learned what I could learn from being at the firm for 5 years. I had gotten what I could out of that experience, and I was legitimately an attorney at that time. I wasn't. The training wheels were off, so I knew I could do my own thing. So I jumped and did my own thing. Started off one-man show, no secretary. Was doing my own bookkeeping, banking, answering the phone and
like
setting the appointments.
20-hour weeks?
It wasn't crazy, because at first I didn't have a ton of business.
Gotcha.
But I was able to upgrade my salary from where I was, even with like a lot less business. Yeah. And I thought, this will be great. I'll have a little. At first I thought, let's say I only have 35 hours of work or something. other 5 hours I'll go to the gym, or no, when you're working for yourself, you just worry about, oh man, I'm not fully busy. Like, where's my next client coming from?
Yeah.
So that was an eye-opening experience, and it also allowed me to kind of start to look at entrepreneurial ventures that were kind of on the side, or I wouldn't even say on the side, just parallel paths or second jobs that when you work for other people, that, that's not really something you can do.
Yeah.
It's difficult, or they have to be understanding. Certainly law firms are not understanding of that. They're jealous. They're like, hey, if you're working, we want you putting that down and billing, and that we want that income stream coming to us.
Yeah.
But my dad had always kind of preached to me, like, look, long term, you want to make your income while you're sleeping.
Yeah.
Not only while you're sitting at your desk and pushing a pencil.
Right.
So I was always kind of looking for another way to create an income for my family that would give me more career flexibility, and so that, at that time when I came out of the firm, it was kind of the housing market was a mess, so the foreclosure market. So I dabbled some in buying foreclosure homes, and then a few years later, it turned into opening a trampoline park, which was kind of my first major entrepreneurial endeavor. And that led into, selling that and then using those funds to open the Blvd.
And before we go to the Blvd, so you open your own practice. You're basically doing it on your own. What was, like, if you could think of the biggest challenge that you kind of had to go through at that time, or biggest stumble, if you will, and that's how you kind of got through it? I know you had support, with your dad and all that, but you were basically doing it on your own.
Yeah, no, my dad's not in law, so I was doing the law thing by myself. I think when I left, if you're going to jump out, you have to, I was pretty good about calculating, okay, how many of my clients are going to stay with me versus stay with the firm that I was at. So I think you got to have a good sense of, if you're going to jump, are you at least going to be able to replace the income that you're leaving? And I was fortunate that I was able to do that pretty quickly, but like I mentioned before, I like being busy. So even I wasn't really it wasn't just a financial move, it was more a lifestyle move, and I think my biggest challenge early on was understanding, I want to be full-time busy, and I'm not really happy if I'm not full-time busy. And I feel a little bit depressed if I'm, 75% of my week is all, I can't, unfortunately, I'm not just one of those guys going to be like, I've got an extra 5-10 hours this week.
Right.
I'm going to go golf, or I'm going to go,
you got to stay on it.
No, I was just like a dog with a bone, like, how do I fill up my weeks? So I learned that about myself, which is really kind of harkened back to college for me. I'm like, I'm seeing some patterns here. Like when I'm not fully busy, I'm not happy.
Where'd that come from? What do you like? Because not everybody has that.
Well, honestly, I think part of it is the depression.
Okay.
Like a good way to deal with depression is to stay busy enough to where you're not staring into the void or staring into the abyss. Like when you're busy working and helping someone else,
you're lost in it.
You're doing that. You're not asking yourself the existential questions. Why are we here? I'll get into things. I also did a philosophy minor in college, which was like, so I've always been kind of one of those guys that's like, I want to answer the big questions. I want to see what the great thinkers think about the big questions.
Right.
And some of that stuff can lead to like, it can be a little overwhelming. It can be anxiety inducing, but I find a lot of satisfaction in someone bringing me a problem. I solve it. I help them. I feel good about myself. So
Yeah.
that was a much better way to spend my time than to have time to kind of let my mind wander
Yeah.
to other places. So I just figured out that's what works well for me is staying busy, and so that's. I wish I could say it's just like, oh, it's grit, or it's just like, oh, I love the hustle, but it's really just more like, no, this is what is the best solution for me on how to live well. So I'm certainly not a workaholic. Like I also have to have a work-life balance, and I enjoy my time off, especially now that I've got a family and I don't have to worry about how to spend my time off. Like, they figure it out for me.
For sure, 100%. No, that's awesome. I mean, self-aware is probably the biggest thing.
Know thyself. That's 100%.
Just being self-aware. And again, sometimes that comes later, but I think it's so important to kind of, you talk about self-reflection and things like that, like think about that stuff early on. And, sometimes as a teen, you're focused on the friend and you're focused on what's happening in school and what's happening like in the next hour or two versus, really having some intentional time with yourself and thinking about that stuff.
Be honest with yourself, understand your own strengths, your own weaknesses, and how those are going to play out in the situations you put yourself in.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to do, and it's sometimes it's really hard to do by 17, especially, I grew up in a very privileged atmosphere where I was in private school. I had my basic needs taken care of.
Yeah.
My concerns were basically getting good grades and trying to excel in sports. And so some of the big picture questions about life, when what's being asked of you is kind of that basic, you're not struggling with yet.
Yeah.
You don't start struggling with them until you're on your own in
Right.
college. And so you haven't developed the skill set by the time you get to college to think about the bigger things, because you're just like, I can just check these boxes that are right in front of me, and I'm doing my job. That's all that's being asked of me.
Right.
So I think when I see kids who struggle more than I had to, I'm like, okay, what are the advantages of that? It's like, well, your life's not as simple. You've got more challenges. Hardship creates, opportunity for growth and for understanding yourself and learning. So I think I, was a late bloomer as far as that stuff went.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, 2018. 2018, you acquired this 45,000 square foot facility, the Boulevard. And, for those who don't know, first of all, the Boulevard is an awesome place. You got to go check it out. But the Boulevard is that like the project? Was that like the project?
Yeah, so the full story of how that came about was we're here at Bynum Inc. doing our thing. Greg, who, I'm the CEO now, I call him the GOAT, which I had to explain to him. Doesn't mean you're old. That's the greatest of all time. He's the GOAT of the company. Right.
And just for clarity, who's Greg?
Greg is my dad. So he founded the company like around the time I was born.
Okay.
And so he really, he built the company from nothing to, we manage 1 million square feet. I wish I had an exact count of how many buildings he's developed, but dozens of buildings he's projects he's touched and developed, and so he's kind of created this entity that I now kind of shepherd and oversee and try to continue to grow. But as far as knowing yourself, it's like I'm not him. And I'm not going to be able to do what he does. So I got to understand my strengths and understand what I can do to make it move forward. But one of the things he had done was he had acquired what was then the empty Costco building and the empty home base building.
Okay.
So that was 250,000 square feet of empty warehouse space.
Okay.
And the question was, what do we do with this? And we had acquired it cheaply enough to where we didn't have to have an immediate answer.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly you don't want to have stuff sit empty for a long time, too. So one of the first things that came along was that we saw that there was a lot of entertainment desire as far as other users trying to get in there. So the first thing was trampoline park companies that were trying to locate, and that was a national fad. And since I had a little spare time, my dad's like, hey, these trampoline park companies are interested in the building because it has 24-foot ceilings.
Oh, I got it.
And that's a rare thing, I guess, the ceiling height with that size.
Yeah.
I just kind of investigated, and started calling around some manufacturers and understanding what these things were. And, with that spare time I had, those extra hours a week, I decided, okay, I'm going to dig into this trampoline park idea. And I had young kids at that time, so that was exciting to like build an amenity that would be great for them to grow up in Bakersfield too. And to know that like one of the knocks on it is it doesn't have the amenities that Los Angeles has and everything else. I think anything that you can add to the town that's something unique and it doesn't already exist here is probably something that is meaningful to me because I'm proud of Bakersfield and want to make it a better place to live and for everyone to exist. So I thought, okay, well, we can let these other guys come in, or we can kind of build the greatest version of this thing for our community that we can come up with. So I decided to do that. Had a partner in Georgia, and we sold that after 3 years to a company that was buying a bunch of them at the same time.
Okay.
And so at the same time that I was kind of getting out of that, I'd already envisioned Boulevard, because I'd kind of watched the trampoline park space as something where parents aren't interacting, they're just sitting on the sidelines. So it was a good kid experience, but it wasn't a good whole family experience. And I felt like there's kind of a hole in the community for that Dave and Buster's style entertainment, although we have a bowling alley, so
but the all-inclusive.
And actually Dave and Buster's now is, they push for 18 and up, so I guess I shouldn't call out my competitor. But that was something I know people were kind of asking for, saying this is something we like to see. And I thought, okay, I have the skill set to deliver this. I have the availability, or I can see the vision for the real estate, which a major chain, like where we're located, is not a natural location for an outside developer or chain to locate. I think we had the vision of saying this can be an entertainment complex and a draw, and so it was the desire to create amenities and the opportunity to do so in a building where we knew that we could benefit both Bynum Inc. and the investors in the Boulevard company by bringing that to town, and then bringing an amenity to Bakersfield that people didn't have at the time. So
fast forward a little bit, because this is 2018. I moved here from the East Coast. We were in San Diego, then we moved to Philadelphia for a year, and then we moved here in 2020. Right at the beginning of the year, right when the pandemic was about to take hold. And so I'm curious, because this is still fresh for you, 2018. This is a couple years in. How did the pandemic impact specifically the Boulevard, and how did you kind of work through, like, what challenges were there, and like how did you work through that stuff?
Yeah, it was an extremely challenging time. I think first of all for my employees, because I was fortunate to where I had other sources of income. I had my attorney job, and was able to was able to do that and kind of hope that that would continue through COVID and that I would at least be able to, not have to worry about financial issues. But we got closed down, and like that was 100 people I had to lay off, all people who kind of worked their tail off to get that place up and going.
Yeah.
And at that time, the early days, it wasn't like we didn't know about PPP or government assistance. It was
Right.
just like, hey, you guys are closed.
Yeah.
And I had loans, I had rent. Obviously, the company owned the building, but we pay market rent, and
Right.
the expectation from everyone was the same, was that you're going to keep paying rent because the building has a bank loan.
Right.
And so it's like, I can't just go say, hey, Dad, I'm not going to pay rent. And he said, okay, son, and rub me on the head.
Right.
There's a bank loan, and the bank's like, okay, if your tenants stop paying rent, then you're in default. So I think the initial onset of it was just like overwhelming with like, even the Bynum Inc. business is just a bunch of real estate buildings, and you're like, well, are all the tenants going to close? How are they going to be able to pay rent?
Yeah.
It kind of felt like, are all the dominoes going to fall here? And but like anything, you just kind of put your head down and you're like, okay, what programs are available to us?
Yeah.
How are we going to pursue those? How am I going to do the best by my people that I can by getting them all the programs and keeping them on the payroll? And so initially it was, it was tough. It's definitely not something like, if you knew it was coming, you wouldn't have opened a 45,000
Right.
foot indoor
Right.
entertainment business.
Right.
But, you can't give up. You just got to kind of put your head down and stay informed about what's going on. And I would say the most difficult part was opening and closing. And we were kind of in a weird category where, like, well, because remember they had like all the tiers, like, oh, you're a tier 3 business, when can you open?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, we were never really clear what tier we were.
Yeah.
And then in Bakersfield, you had businesses that just ignored,
Right.
ignored it altogether, and you're thinking, well, should I be doing that? And
Right.
I buy like, I guess I'm a rule follower by just trait. That's just who I was born to be,
Yeah, by nature. Huh?
Yeah. Probably that whole experience made me look back and be like, okay, did we do the best job with that? Did these rules make sense at the time?
Yeah.
And if it happened again today, who knows what that would look like? But yeah, that was very challenging, just from a standpoint of letting people go, trying to help the people that work for me.
Yeah.
And trying to understand, when everything was going to come back around and would we survive it. And fortunately, the government assistance did what we needed to do. We had some money in the bank when we closed, so we were able to use that. So we had a good solution for every problem that came up.
Yeah.
And part of that was, just good luck that we had some money in the bank and had a good quarter previously.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that was a brutal time.
It was tough times. So kind of switching a little bit away from just career and just an overview. We all have challenging times. We all have, failures and struggles. And a part of this, for me, especially when I'm speaking, is, just talking about failure, talking about what that looks like, and what it actually means to a certain degree. So have you ever had any like big fails, fall on your face? I don't know if you remember Kobe Bryant shot all those air balls, shot all those air balls in front of the whole world and just embarrassed himself. But what do you have any that you can share? Any like big fails, and just how you kind of work through it? Maybe what you got out of it.
Yeah. I'd say I've been pretty risk averse. I'd say my failures in life, I look at more like on the personal side than on the business side.
Yeah. Those matter.
Yeah, I'd say like, failure to understand and treat depression like early almost cost me like in a bad way. So I think it almost cost me, my relationship with my wife.
Yeah.
It almost cost me, some career elements. So I'd say, it's not like a momentary failure, like, hey, I went right, but if I would have gone left, I would have had great success or something. I think I've been pretty fortunate. The trampoline park did well. The day before it opened, I was like, what if no one shows up? Boulevard did well. The day before it opened, what if no one shows up?
Right.
I'm working on a second one now in West Sacramento.
Okay.
And it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, my view on failure now is like, if you're not failing sometimes, you're probably not, pushing yourself to where you should be. So if I look at my career, it's like I played it pretty safe, and I'm not saying I'm trying to go out and take crazy risk, but I think the concept of failure, if you do everything you can to succeed and you plan well and you execute well and you still fail, you can live with that. If you don't do all those things, that's tough. And so I'd say more in my personal life, do I look back and say, oh man, I was experiencing this thing and I didn't, academically, if I was failing, I would go to the tutor.
Yeah.
But personally, if I was failing or if I was, not experiencing life to the fullest, I wasn't addressing it.
Yeah.
I was just kind of like, hey, I'm just going to wait till this problem goes away. That's not going to go away. So I'd say that was my biggest failure, is probably, American life is this crazy thing where we really amplify youth as a way of like, college itself is like, hey, here's 4 years to kind of like, if you're fortunate like I was, like have some time to figure some things out and some free times to move, and like I'm not blind at all to the fact that some kids have to work. My dad worked 40 hours and took a full load at college and at the same time. So, but I certainly, and I think the American dream, in some ways, we kind of promote this idea kids are going to go off to college and have 4 years just to kind of mess around and go to class and ruminate about what they want to do with life. And I think some of those younger years, were wasted by failure to treat depression and failure to deal with personal issues. Probably out of like a sense of pride or out of a sense of this concept that I'm supposed to be perfect.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be a Spartan. I'm supposed to be an Iron Man.
Yeah.
If I take a pill, that means I'm a failure.
Yeah.
A lot of those feelings. So I think that's what failure, or letting down people in my life because I'm not taking care of myself. Letting down my significant other or not being who she needs me to be because I'm not taking care of myself. I'd say those are the areas where I look back and say I've had a failure.
I mean, for me, I think, just in general, I think failure is a good thing, can be a good thing. But, failure always, I describe it as the steps towards success. A lot of times you can't really get there. Like you say, if you don't push yourself, if you're not feeling it's something, you're really not like tapping into what you can be and what you can become. So, those failures are important. And then the other thing is like men, I forget the guy's name. I have to find it. But there's a gentleman, I want to say out of New York. He had this concept called the man box. And the man box is basically everything that you just said. It's what society tells us we're supposed to be as men. You're supposed to be a Spartan. You're supposed to be strong. You're not supposed to show any weakness. And, just in what you described, addressing that head on probably would have benefited you in several different ways early on. So failure isn't a bad thing, but sometimes and I asked these little kids. I did this video with some kids, and is failure bad? Yeah, failure's bad, and so the narrative around failure sometimes can be just misconstrued, and I think it's important to talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, to go back to the Kobe air ball, it's like Kobe. We all know how Kobe prepared.
Yeah.
So he can live with his air balls.
Yeah.
I think he can, or he should be able to. So
yeah.
I think that should be people's perspective on failures. Like, if you failed because you didn't plan on the way in, or you didn't do what you need to do, or you made a tactical error because you weren't doing your best to inform yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are the ones that hurt.
Yeah.
And everyone's got to make calculated risks and decisions in life. So if things don't always come up roses, that's okay. And if you can learn to be resilient and deal with that consistently and not have it destroy you mentally, you're going to be much, much better off. I've seen things where I forget who it was that was talking about. He kind of hopes his kids lose.
Mm-hmm.
What's
to build resilience?
Sport, because understanding how to lose is so much more important than whatever fleeting thing we get out of winning. It's like if you can understand losing and understand how to deal with it and how to maintain your self-esteem and everything through it.
It's huge.
Even it's funny when you say failure, it's like, well, maybe giving up on basketball it's like, maybe I should have just given it my all, took what came to me, maybe getting out was the easy way out because it was too hard on my ego to just be like, you're not what you think you are. You're not this person you are that you think you are.
And I think even the perspective to have that later on, you have kids, and there's things that I've done that I probably wish I had done differently, but I can share that experience with my children, and even Kobe with the air balls. What he did, which most people don't do, is he evaluated the air balls. He evaluated why he shot those air balls, and what he realized was that he didn't have legs because he was used to playing against high school kids. So what he ended up doing was just going back to the gym and just working really hard, but a lot of people, they just kind of fold up and decide to, I don't know, Kobe wasn't going to stop shooting, but they might just change their game or whatever it may be. So that was the biggest thing that I got out of that from him, is that he didn't run away from it. He evaluated it. And, I think there's something to be learned in the way that we approach the failures and hopefully the lessons that we get out of them. Because whether you decided to leave basketball for whatever reasons, you could have a whole different perspective, an egocentric perspective around that now, today, that doesn't necessarily serve you or your kids or whoever.
Yeah, certainly when you do fail, if you're not taking the time to look back and understand what can I learn from this going forward, and how can I avoid making this the next time, you're missing a big opportunity to grow. So I actually struggle with asking myself, well, am I risky enough? Because talking about my dad, the GOAT, he certainly, he did some things and put it on the line in a major way, several times, went through some terrible business cycles, and, took risks that maybe I'm, not willing to take or not constitutionally, set up to take. And so, I asked myself, well, maybe my failure is one of complacency, or being too risk averse when I should be taking bigger swings. Even even my love for comedy. It's like, well, you played it safe, man. You went and got a business degree. You could have gone and lived on the couches. And I think ultimately you have a sense of like that wouldn't work for me. Like I couldn't live like that, or certainly with like depression and everything, the lack of sleep, the staying up all night, the travel. I don't think it would have suited me well. But
well, I mean, your journey is your journey. That's the way I look at it. I mean, my journey to where I am today, and there's a lot that you can look at, and a lot that could. What if I would have done this differently? Would have changed that? And I don't believe I have the impact that I'm able to have today had some of those things changed. So it's interesting in hindsight looking at those things. It really is. Okay, so a part of this again is like people learning. So do you have, some people do, some people don't, but do you have any habits or rituals, like daily habits or rituals that you have in place for what you do on a daily basis and how you work?
I think I focus on trying to find one good thing about every day that I'm going to focus on.
Okay.
I don't really have I'm willing to work all the time, check my email up at 6, work all day, go home, do phone calls. So like I said, I like to be busy, so I don't need a lot of habits surrounding like motivating me to work, but maintaining the balance and maintaining the joy of like everyday life is probably the bigger challenge for me. So focusing on the little things. For me now, it's like family is my only metric of success that I judge myself by. I've been fortunate to have some success in business to the point where it's you really understand that your treasure and your wealth in life is your family and the people around you. And like if you're lucky enough in life to make a little money, that becomes apparent like very quickly. You're like, oh, this does not fulfill me. This does not. So I try to keep my focus on finding a good thing about every day and keeping focused on my family. That's basically my ritual or my habit. And then I try to make my lunch hour about spending time with a friend and just making that the time that I have as a guy to, it's tough when you're running a business. You get kind of pulled towards certain things all day long. You get home and you're a dad and you have duties, so it's like finding that time for yourself is hard. So for me, that's the lunch hour. I try to touch base with different people on my lunch hour and just ask how they're doing and talk about anything but work. And so I don't know that those are necessarily like great habits, but I've never been a guy to like write a goal on a mirror or anything. Like I'm more just a head down, grind.
They are yours, bro. Like it belongs to you, and this is again the reason, because you are who you are and you are where you are for a bunch of different reasons. So, and the cool thing about this is that we're talking to different people because no one's gonna do it the same way,
right?
And that's the beauty of just life and just human beings. So what do you think about, what are your thoughts around aligning your passions with your work, like your dreams and your work? Is it overrated, underrated? Like what's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to be really careful about finding the thing that you love the most in life and turning that into a job for a couple reasons. One is like you may end up taking that thing that you love and destroying it. Like you no longer love it because it is your job now, and the job element has sucked a lot of joy out of it.
Okay.
I tend to be the person who wants a job that I enjoy, that I excel at. I'd say more important than your passion is your skill set.
Okay.
Find find what your skill set is and align yourself in a job that your skills are going to help you excel and help you be respected and help you achieve what you want to achieve. Passions can be injected into your life in so many different ways. Like that I've done with comedy. You know, I book shows on the side, and I know the comedians in town, and I scratch my itch that way.
Right.
But I've looked at, would I want to be a full-time promoter? And does that lend itself to the skills that I have the best? And I was like, no, my skill set is basically critical thinking, decision making, financial analysis.
Yeah.
Not what a promoter does.
Yeah.
And you know, I've seen people pursue dreams without kind of asking themselves, do I have the skill set for this? Like, just because it's, it'd be like if I was like, I'm 5'11".
I'm going to the NBA.
Yeah, I'm going to the NBA. It's like, okay, like, does that make any sense? Is that where my skill set is?
Yeah.
If I want to be involved in basketball, do I want to be a coach? Okay, does being a coach align? Like, coaching is on the road. Coaching is recruiting. Coaching is high pressure. Coaching is no job security.
Yeah.
How does that going to align with my personal makeup and my ability to deal with anxiety and stress? And
and it goes back again to self-reflection and being aware.
yeah, so I think there's plenty of opportunity to put your joy and your passion in life and fit them in around a career. I think there are people in life whose talents and dreams align perfectly and have the work ethic to succeed, and those are the people we hold up on them, on the Kobe's, the famous actor or actress, and it's like they have an amazing job that they're great at and they have the skills for, and we celebrate it because we all wish we had that, but I don't think that's realistic. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, I'll tell you, like, I've said what brings me more joy than anything is my family, being able to provide in a way that also allows me to spend time with them. And I find it so interesting. I mean, you see actresses. I mean, there's notable actors and actresses who are basically at the top of Hollywood that are choosing to, like, I'm going to retire from acting or whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's like, they're like, you know what, being on a set, 50 hours a week and that doesn't fulfill me.
Yeah.
What fulfills me is being around my family.
Yeah.
I can do that and helping to provide for my family, help raise my kid. So I think, it's hard to know when you're young that, family is going to be a really fulfilling thing for me.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, I feel fortunate, and I tell people, you shouldn't do a job that you hate. Your work shouldn't be a source of emotional distress for you. But I view work as a gift.
Yeah.
Work is, and in some ways, kind of like what we're made to do. And so, I don't wake up every morning just like jump out of bed like I got to go to work today. But there are things about every day. It's like, okay, I got to get this done. I'm excited to get that done. And, so I do think the message we send young people in general, which is to live out your dream, in general is overrated, because I've seen probably, 99 times out of 100 that taken to its fullest. Like, I have a very good friend who wanted to do comedy and wanted to be a writer and kind of pursued that to its fullest, and now he's struggling because it never panned out. And, sometimes the struggle looks like you end up in a career that you don't like at all, but you don't have any other options because you chased this one thing so hard and it didn't work out. And you didn't have a plan B, and so your plan B is given to you, and it's not necessarily something you want. So having an achievable plan that is something that you can live with and that you can find a little bit of joy in, and that kind of scratches your itch in life of either, like for me, the law thing was I really enjoyed just helping people. When people, I'm a problem solver, I'm a fixer. So if someone comes to me with a problem, I want to help them with it. So I get fulfillment out of that in a way that has nothing to do with comedy or, basketball.
Yeah. Well, that's the name of it is Design Your Life, and I mean that's a part of it. I mean, you naturally want to help people. You're naturally a fixer, analytic, mind, and law. To me, it sounds like it hits all those points. And could you have hit those points in a different way? I'm sure you could have. But they seem to be in alignment with your skill set and also the thing that you want to do, which is help people and, and then obviously hit those little scratch points with comedy and, those things as well. So no, that's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, it's a different perspective, and I love it because everyone is different and going to approach it a little bit differently. I want to know what you think about mentors.
Mentors. Mentors are invaluable. It comes back to continuing education and wanting to constantly be a better version of yourself. Not just for yourself, but for your family. Yeah. So that you can be a better father, so you can be a better boss. So a ton of what I've learned, and the way you learn through a mentor, through kind of that relationship and that interpersonal communication, is very different than reading a book, or going to a seminar or something. It's a different tool, and it's a good mentor will know you enough to speak into your life and not just say, hey, do ABC. It'll be like, hey, I noticed this is going on with you, and I experienced something similar. Here's how I dealt with it. How are you dealing with it? Yeah. So I just think it's a very unique interpersonal way of continuing to learn about yourself and life, and expose yourself to different ideas that may not have occurred to you, you may not have come across otherwise. So I think it's definitely something you should always seek out, just in terms of understanding our world and understanding yourself and educating yourself.
There's a woman I used to work with. She was I used to call her the most organized person in the world. Like, we'd be in a management meeting, she'd have a stack of folders, and you ask her a question, she thumbed through it and she grabs out that stack. And I remember, you talk about mentors, I remember asking her for some time and just like, how do you do it? But one of the things that I wanted to know from her is like how she prioritized, how she set goals. And we had a wonderful conversation. I'm curious, because you've had several businesses, you have businesses that you're running. How do you like set goals and prioritize those goals? Because I think sometimes, in goals and game plans, and we probably won't get into game plan as much, but you have a dream, you have an idea for what you want to do, but the foundation of a lot of that has to be centered around, I believe, a goal. So how do you?
Yeah, so to me, when you start with how much bandwidth do you have? How do I want to spend it? Okay. So your time and your bandwidth is in some ways your only resource. Like, yeah, you have money. Well, money you can get from other people. You can get investors or whatever. So I start by thinking about my bandwidth, and then what do I want to do with it? Okay, what are my kind of core values or things that kind of will provide me some fulfillment or allow me to be creative in the way that I want to be creative. So I start by kind of maybe backwards engineering it and saying, okay, I know these things about myself.
Mm-hmm.
Here are the opportunities in front of me. Which one can I pursue that will satisfy these I guess desires, or these issues about me, or these desires to be creative the most, and then what will I be able to succeed by pursuing those things? So, like in doing the Boulevard, it was, okay, this is going to be a lot of work. I've got the law thing going. I've got stuff going on at Bynum. Do I have the bandwidth to do it?
Okay.
Is this a good way to spend my bandwidth? Does it allow me to, create some financial freedom for myself if it goes well? Does it help the business at Bynum Inc.? Does it provide the community an amenity? Does it allow me to be creative in helping design it and figuring out what it looks like? And so, the goal was never like, the goal was never, I want to open a bowling alley with an arcade. And, it was more like, I want to provide amenities. I want to be creative. I want to bring the best version of what this thing can be to Bakersfield. Because you usually only get one in Bakersfield, Bakersfield doesn't get 15 movie theaters.
Right.
We get a couple. So if a bad one comes in and takes up some of that space, then everyone in Bakersfield is stuck with that bad amenity.
Right.
So I think of things in that way. So
okay.
I guess I kind of more sit back and look for opportunities and decide which one fits with my values the most, and then attack it as hard as I can. I'm a little bit more opportunistic than just like setting a goal. And with all that, the underlying goal is provide for the family, like maintain balance with my life and what I'm trying to. But there's obviously more simple goals like this West Sacramento like Boulevard 2 I'm trying to open has the goal of, okay, get enough investors, get financing, procure a building. Yeah. And all those are kind of the iterative goals to get me to the big picture of, okay, I'm redeveloping real estate that's fallen empty and that is kind of blighting a community. How can I turn it into something interesting for that community? How can I make it creative and great for that community?
And it goes again back to some of your natural, not only skill sets, but just, what you naturally like to do, which is help. Yeah.
I mean, I think goal setting is something I could probably be better at, as far as just like, what do I want 5 years from now to look like? I tend to just be like, keep putting one foot in front of the other, work hard, be intentional about, the things you're choosing to do. And, you get to an age where you're like, well, life's not gonna look anything like what you think it's gonna look like anyway. My daughter was, who taught me early on how much I love being a father and love family life was, we got pregnant like 14 days into our marriage, and that wasn't part of the plan. And at one point, me and my wife agreed, okay, we're done. We've had two. And then our third child, which my wife really pushed for, and I just thought I don't know that I can handle this. I was really worried about that stress component, and it's been one of the greatest blessings in my life. So I don't know. In looking at the future, I tend to keep an open mind that it's not going to look much like I want. So just be ready to take whatever pitch is thrown your way. Yeah. And be prepared, work hard, try to match preparation with opportunity, and do your best. So.
Hey, well, if you can get better at goal setting, people can learn something because you're doing something right. All right, I'm gonna shake it up real quick. We're gonna start to wrap it up, but I want to play it. I call it a game. It's not really a game, but imagine if. Imagine if you could invite 3 historical people, living or dead, to Tumbler Brewing Company for an ice cold one. Who would they be, and what would one of the topics of conversation be? Over a nice cold one.
Nice cold one. Okay.
Whoever you want.
Living or dead, you said?
Living or dead.
Okay. So I think I'd have Magic Johnson there
Okay.
because he's had such an interesting life. He was kind of my hero growing up. Watched the tragedy that beset him.
Yeah.
Felt like it's over.
Yeah.
And he's a huge success now.
Yeah.
So I just think, as far as like the arc of what he's been through, and like the human experience, in some ways is like way more interesting than like a Michael Jordan or like, because he succeeded in different areas. He seems to always be positive. I think Elon Musk.
Okay.
He's a guy who's kind of taught me something about, just from reading. And I did get to meet him one time. Kevin McCarthy brought him to town for a dinner.
Okay.
That I got to sit at that dinner, and, I wasn't at his table or anything, but I did get to like kind of get a sense of how his brain works and how he interacts, and like he's someone I read a lot about and follow a lot.
Nice.
And I think he's one of our modern day geniuses. And he's the head of a number of different companies at once. And I think sometimes I'm worried people look at it like, well, what's he doing running this, family entertainment center at the same time as a real estate development company? But if you understand your core job as a CEO, it's basically to make very difficult decisions well. And it's not necessarily making 1,000 decisions. And it's finding, addressing problems and fixing them and getting people, pointed in the right direction. Which really, if you put aside doing all the tasks that you do that maybe someone else can do, or maybe someone that has the other skill sets can do, you can do for multiple different companies. Like, he's got the Boring Company, SpaceX, and Tesla. And so I think about that as kind of the modern CEO.
Okay.
Tends to have multiple companies they're working with.
Okay. Okay.
So Magic, Elon.
One more.
Who would go well with them? I'm gonna go kind of left field here. I mean, it's so cliche, but like, you got to go with Jesus, right?
Yeah, listen, what's so funny? It was so funny because I've had these conversations, and so I've gotten Jesus a couple times. I've gotten God once.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
so Magic, Elon Musk, and Jesus.
Magic, Elon, and Jesus. Yeah.
And Dave Bynum. What you guys are drinking beer, and what are you talking about?
I'm just asking them, like, hey, man, what's the secret to living right? Like, actually a lot of, I was just thinking to myself, like, before you asked that question, like, man, this has been a great podcast because you're very prepared. You're asking a lot of interesting questions, and I'm like, questions I haven't asked myself and thought about. So I think a lot of what we talked about today would be on the list.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. No, I think you've done a great job. So I've been on a few podcasts. So
okay.
Like, some people just come in and just,
just wing it.
Yeah, they're like, hey, we're talking today. So I appreciate what you bring to the table and the intentionality.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think understanding people's low points, how they responded to them. I tend to, I take interest in people's like romantic lives because, that's always been something that affected me so much, my like relationship with my wife and understanding that. And that wouldn't be a great one for Jesus, but for Magic and Elon's had a lot of like relationships, and I think was devastated by his relationship with Amber Heard in 28. Like it tore him apart, and I kind of had one of those where I was like, you know, I moved cities and kind of changed the trajectory because I was like, I need a reset and I need to but. Yeah, I think just why are we here?
Okay.
You know, what's it about?
Okay.
I'd love to, you know, Jesus is all knowing, so I could be like, hey, who killed JFK? Some of those mysteries, are we the only ones out there? You know, some of those big questions. You just like, hey, well, while you're here, you know, I guess the Trinity. You say Jesus, God. They're, you know, by my faith background, they're all tied together.
Yeah.
But I do think I grew up with the Bible and reading it, and I think this can be said about a lot of the ancient texts. But like you kind of take it for granted, or you're like, and then you get to a certain age, and you're like, oh, like the wisdom of this is like next level. But it's hard when you just like have it in your backpack every day, maybe to like appreciate it. It's nice to take a step back and be like, oh no. Look at how many different angles you can look at this from, and what you can really glean from this, and what it means to you now that you've lived 40 years, and like how applicable it is. So that's something.
Okay, imagine if you know, you're going to play pickup, got 4 other spots.
Oh man, okay.
4 other spots. You can pick whoever you want, living or dead.
Okay.
Who are you running with?
I'm going to go with Tim Duncan.
Okay.
Just because, I mean, the guy gets it done. Like statistically, you can't argue with it. It's not exciting to watch.
Get it. What's the goal? Win.
Yeah. I was a David Robinson fan growing up. Like even the Admiral had like a little bit of flash, and like he had those huge guns, and like they're just, I think, but you're like, you can't argue that Tim Duncan wasn't better than David Robinson.
Yeah.
So we'll start with him, get that one out of the way. I'm definitely a LeBron guy.
Okay.
I'm always fascinated by people that cannot see, or like the LeBaby thing, or like people that do not see the value of what LeBron's done, which is from the time he was in high school, has achieved and entertained at the highest level. Been a good teammate, been a good moral example of like what a family man should be, and what like I'm just like, what more do you want out of admitting that no human being is perfect,
right? All
the way, like, what more do you want from a human being? Like, you know, I just don't know.
I think a lot of times it's the Jordan fans, and I'm a Jordan fan.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to say I'm a Jordan fan, but I think a lot of times you get blinded by the fandom of it all, because like you said, on the court he's getting it done, off the court he's getting it done. You know, he's speaking up and out for things that matter. You know, so I don't know how you...
I got to go off script then a minute. Like,
okay,
please. You're starting a franchise.
Okay.
And you're like, you're going to do a long-term contract with someone. You got to pick someone to start a franchise off. It's Jordan or LeBron.
Me?
Yeah.
I'm biased. I'm biased because so just to quantify it, you know, when Jordan, I don't know, the 88, the 89s and all that kind of stuff, like that's when I was like getting introduced to basketball. So it's like, for me, it's Jordan. And I'm talking about purely on the basketball court. I'm talking purely on the basketball
But there's
court.
more to it, right?
No, there's more to it.
There's like, what kind of leader do you want? There's like, is this guy going to develop a gambling problem? Does this guy have the mental, like, toughness to play 20 years? Or is he going to have to take a break? Is he going to struggle with his own success to where he's like, that's where I'm like.
I think from a standpoint of a person, and I don't want to be too judgmental, but like from a person, if I'm looking at those two individuals as people, LeBron James, by all means, I mean, the person that he is, you see him on little clips, just in the gym with his kids at the AAU games, and just the fun loving, and and they're two different people, different types of people, but
I just think no one's ever hard enough on Jordan for two the multiple retirements.
Yeah.
Like, you know what LeBron's done? He's just ground it out for 20 years. That's not easy to do, even mentally.
No.
Stay interested in any endeavor for that long when you're at that, you have that much success, and that's the thing where I'm like, people want to say Blvd, like, oh, he cries about the. It's like, okay, like, he's not perfect. He's a human being. Yeah. Like, maybe we could make that a little better. I'm just like, but the element where he's been at the top of his game for as long as he has, and has maintained his body in that way, has maintained his mental health in that way. I'm just like, if I had to start a franchise. Yeah. And I had a team of psychologists in, and I I bet the psychologists would come back like, dude, Jordan's got he's got some things that, like, may not show up in years 1 through 6, but, like, get to year 10, like, you're going to have some issues with the guy. The teammates are, the owners are, like, I don't know. That's just my, okay.
Yeah, so, no, by all means.
Anyway, like, the GOAT conversation is, like, pointless to me because, like, it's just... But that's a more interesting question to me, is like, who would you want to build a franchise around if you had to pick one? Because that's not always just going to come down to on the court greatness. Yeah. I mean,
like I said, the person that he is, I mean, I don't think anyone could ever be Muhammad Ali. I don't think he's just in a whole different category. But just the person that LeBron James is, I have a son. I would love, if I had to, who are you going to be? LeBron James. Yeah. He's the family man. He's an intelligent guy. He's focused on goals. He sees it through. He has to me, from the outside looking in, has a great personality. I mean, people can pick at the stuff with the champion in the beginning with the Mavs when he, might have flamed out or whatever. But just as a person and an individual, a good human being, I'm definitely 100% LeBron James. 100%. But if it came down to one game, I want Jordan for that one game.
Okay. That's fair enough. That's a different thing. Yeah. I do think he has that killer thing where he's got to have it more than LeBron's got to have it. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's a different...
That's a different thing.
Defensively... I think, too, like, defensive intensity.
Well, he just...
It's hard to judge that. I mean, I have to go watch Bron from 15 years ago, but, it's hard to judge that at this age.
He just wouldn't be denied. Kind of Kobe had that thing where he just wouldn't be denied. He was going to, I'm going to win or I'm going to die. Kind of.
The entertainment value of it is like the trash. It's like he comes up with stories to motivate himself. Like,
right.
Yeah, you don't get the sense LeBron's that way. He's just like, I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna do my job, and kind of like
having fun with his teammates with the shakes, and he's more of a fun-loving guy. And they led, I think, in two entirely different ways, and they're obviously winners. So.
Okay, so I got...
You got two more. You got Tim Duncan,
Tim Duncan, LeBron, obviously Michael Jordan.
Okay.
And, I mean, given that you have those guys, I'd probably take Steph. Just like have a crazy ability to hit threes.
To shoot it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying Steph is on Rushmore, but I'm saying if I got Tim Duncan, Jordan, I probably don't need, I probably don't need a Magic as much as I need a guy. LeBron. Yeah, I don't have a great 3-point shooter in that squad.
Right.
I want the greatest shooter of all time.
And I'm
even though he can't. I mean, defensively, maybe
he's going to suffer. But you got Tim Duncan, you got Jordan back there, and LeBron when he wants to play defense. So he cover up something. But I don't want to make this about me at all. But I got to throw Larry Bird in there.
Yeah,
I'll probably take Steph out. I got to throw Larry Bird in there because let me be the shortest little, run out there. And Larry, man, I loved his game.
highlights are crazy.
I loved his game. He talked it and he backed it up and he hit clutch shots and, played no real defense, but just kind of got after it. But Larry Bird, man, he was one of the guys for me. Okay, all right, it's not about me. All right, imagine if you can go back in time. Last one. Imagine if you can go back in time and give your younger self advice about life design.
About life design.
What would it be?
Yeah, so some hitting on some things that we talk about already. It would be, be very precious about how you're educating yourself. So figure that, do not rush, do not chase. Nowhere I ever went did anyone really care where I went to college. Like law school, talking to investors. So I think at the time I went to school, I was like, I'm going to UC San Diego, and I'm proud of that. And it's a better school than San Diego State from the standpoint of it's higher on the rankings or whatever.
Yeah.
But San Diego State probably had a better business program.
Yeah.
So looking back, it's saying San Diego State was the right choice. I'm just try and understand what you want to do, or at least understand the program you're getting yourself into, because you're locking yourself in for 4 years, sometimes with very little information.
Yeah.
I don't think we give enough thought to that decision when it's pretty foundational and pretty, you're really launching your adult life.
Yeah.
So give that decision. And by the way, most successful guy I know, best guy I know, most ethical guy I know, smartest guy I know is my dad. And 2 years at BC, 2 years at Cal State.
Okay.
And still talks about his experience with professors at Cal State as being foundational and changing the way he thinks. And so I don't think chasing the name of a school is really that important at all. Find a place that will foster your self-improvement the way that you want to be improved.
Okay.
And I was really just okay, what's the highest rank I can get for the least amount of money?
Yeah.
That's the way I approached it. So that'd be one thing. And then, you should never delay addressing, personal issues. You should never ignore it.
Yeah.
Because your brain likes repetitive processes. So if you get stuck in a negative way of thinking, and you get stuck in it for a decade, it's hard. It's much harder to get out of than if you are stuck in it for 6 months and you go do something about it. So don't allow your brain to get wired in a way that you don't want it to be. Wire it with positivity. Wire it with. I think there's so much kind of hocus pocus out there about speaking things into existence, and I'm not The Secret and all those things, and I'm not a big believer in that actually doing anything magical in the universe, but there is something about positive psychology that will tell you speaking positive things and repeating things that you need to hear, and telling yourself a story that's a positive one as opposed to a negative one, does have positive impacts on your brain.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's you tell the universe I'm going to be a billionaire and all of a sudden financial opportunities start to show up, but I think your brain starts to look for opportunities in different ways because it's understands an aspiration, understands your positivity towards
feeding
it.
it positivity.
Yeah. So I'd just say take care of yourself, take care of your brain in that way.
So there's a kid who is they have this dream or this thing that they want, this thing that they love, that they really enjoy, that they feel like they want to pursue, but they don't have any support. Like the family doesn't support or just doesn't believe that they can do it, and but the kid can't turn it off. Mm-hmm. He can't turn it off. What do you say to that kid?
That's okay. Like, your family is not perfect. Your family is not, your family just given to you. And some people's families are very flawed.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate to have, like, honestly, one of the best men I know is my father. So, like, and I recognize most people are not in that situation.
Yeah.
And that's its own trap, because when you have a very successful person, like, kind of telling you what you think you should do, it's like, maybe I shouldn't listen to myself. Maybe I should listen to this guy. But, no one's going to know you as well as you know yourself. Mm-hmm. So just do what we talked about earlier, which is understand your strengths, understand your weaknesses, understand your opportunities, understand the risk that you're taking. Yeah. If you're doing something very risky and you're trying to, be the greatest rapper in the world, or the greatest novelist, or the greatest actor, realize, like so many kids now just want to be like influencers or something. Like, realize, like, there's, everybody wants that job and there's only a few of them. So make a plan B for yourself. That's okay. Life, you can give a lot of yourself to something and also prepare yourself for a soft landing if that thing doesn't go the way it should. So that's what I think people who get into very, I hear about, like, famous actors like Jeremy Renner and stuff. He renovates houses on the side. Like, you can pursue, some pretty serious endeavors, but also have a side source of stability for your family and for yourself if things don't work out. And if you don't have that, I think you'll be bitter at yourself, for failing and not, you'll be defined by that failure instead of like, well, I tried this thing, it didn't work, and that's okay because I had this other way to go. Right, so I wouldn't let your family too much dictate, what your aspirations are, because they have all sorts of reasons. How many kids, especially in our generations, were like, hey, you need to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a, engineer. Yeah. Okay, and then I grow up, I'm like, I get out of college, 3 years of, like, law school, and then I get a master's in tax after it, and I get out, and I'm like, how come no one told me firemen make so much money? Like, like, there's all sorts of amazing careers that lead to great, life balance, and that people just didn't talk about. Even like the trades, I work with construction people. There's so many great tradespeople out there, and people running their own businesses as electricians and general contractors, and doing very well. And I think like working outside. So I don't know. People have their own reasons for telling you what they want to do, whether it's like my dad. I got into Georgetown Law, and my dad very much wanted me to go to Georgetown Law, and to me, and I'm just speaking for myself. To me, that was like, well, he went to CSUB, and he's been around all these people that have this academic pedigree, and so he wants me to go chase that because of how it reflects on him. I had a scholarship to the University of San Diego. I didn't want to rack up a bunch of debt going to law school because I knew I didn't want to do it for my life. Right. So that's what made sense for me. And he was like, nah, like, you got to go to Georgetown. And I was like, I don't want to go chase the clout, move across the country, move away from my support system. I had some of the issues I was dealing with emotionally where I was like, no, I don't think moving to, like, a very cold place without any of my people there is what's going to foster my growth the best. So everybody has their own motivations for what they want you to do. And certainly if what you want to do is off the beaten path, like, you're not going to get much. I mean, I've heard a million stories of comedians becoming successful, and that's something the family's always like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you doing? You know, but some very great people have seen in themselves, no, I have the thing that it takes. And I'm going to go do my best. And like, even once they're successful, their family doesn't understand it, or they'll go out, they're like, this isn't for me, or I don't like it.
Yeah.
So you have to look at everybody's motivations for why they want you to do. I think we all want our kids to do well and have an impact on society and be engaged. And there's a few like obvious answers for how to accomplish that. But the more interesting thing is the millions of ways that you can accomplish that, and the non-obvious, paths. So I'd tell people, like, there's a million interesting paths. There's a million ways to make a good living and be successful at doing your own thing. So don't let your family, dictate what the answers are. And understand who the person making the recommendation to you is. If you really respect their, then give it the weight that it's due. But you kind of also have to understand their psychology and where they're coming from.
Right. All right. So, like I said, we're just about done. But do you feel like you're living a life by design, by your own design, and why is that important to you?
Yeah, at this point, it's an interesting age, I think. People think, 40, you're old, and it's not, it's not as fun as being in your 20s. I mean, personally, I have more satisfaction now than I've ever had, and I think that's not just by career design, but it's by family design. It's by being able to shape what I want my days to look like, and having worked hard to create a little freedom to move around and involve myself in things that are meaningful. As where when you're young, it's like a lot of it's just like, hey, grind so that you can get a little respect, have an opportunity that you can take advantage of and succeed. So I think the overall picture of like having the work-life balance I want, having the family I want, supporting them in the way that I want to, even supporting my dad as he's kind of coming off of, the prime years of his career. All that stuff's very meaningful to me and fulfilling to me. And, I think your 20s can be aggravating and just kind of be like a question mark of like, where's this going? Am I going to hit? Is this going to land? Am I going to find the right person for me? Like, right now I feel like I was very intentional about who I selected as my spouse. I knew her since I was 15.
Okay.
And when I came back to Bakersfield at 25, we spoke maybe once a year, and she was living in LA, and I reached out and made up an excuse to I'm gonna kind of, it's your birthday's coming up, I'm gonna be in LA, how about we go to dinner? And so some of those decisions that were very intentional and very designed are now bearing fruit, like with my children and my family life being the way I want it to look.
Nice.
And same thing with the career, going from just a law firm job where there's things I didn't like about the grind of it to, okay, I'm going to go out on my own now. Okay, now I'm going to do a side entrepreneurial thing. Okay, now my dad wants to slow down. I'm going to get rid of the law career and step into this other position. I think, all those things were hard decisions to make, but made with the ultimate question of, okay, what's important to me? Is it to live in 70-degree weather year round and make every dollar I can, or is it to support my family, to have a good work-life balance, to be able to engage with my community the way I want? So I think I'm at a point in my life where a lot of those seeds planted early on, a lot of the work done is bearing fruit. And so yeah, I think, living life by design is not always easy, because if you're planning well, and you're planning for success well, a lot of times what it looks like is a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, guess what? Like, you're going to be in school for 7 years, and then you're going to grind a job, but it will, it will pay dividends later on, and it will be fulfilling throughout, because it's headed towards that process. So I think, you only get one life, so don't let someone else live it for you. Don't live it according to someone else's standards, and don't be fooled by what popular culture and everything else is telling you got to do.
Yeah.
Because everybody's got a reason to convince you that this or that's the right thing to chase. But the people I know who've been most successful are the people who understand themselves the best, design what they want to do and what they want to achieve around their strengths and weaknesses, and then just get after it.
Hey man, listen, I really appreciate your time. I want to know if there's anything special you want to tell people, or any projects that you want to talk about, and how, if you want people to contact you, how they can contact you. Any closing messages?
Yeah, no, obviously we continue to try and keep the Boulevard as a staple of the community that's we want to be around for a long time, so that's important to me. So if you feel like it's slipping, or if it's not doing its thing, let me know.
Okay.
That's part of my job, is making sure that place is a high quality amenity. Definitely support, Kyle at Game Day
Sports Academy.
and Dignity Health Sports Complex. And I think I just encourage whoever's listening out there, do something to make your community special, and do something to make your community a nice place to live and be in, and so that everyone there can enjoy it. And I hope you guys go do something special, and that I get to partake in it. As a customer, I'm always excited to hear what people are doing and bringing, and I'm always excited to go support and keep making Bakersfield an interesting, fun place to be.
Yeah. Well, I'll be calling on you, that's for sure. But I definitely appreciate your time. I want to know one last thing. More times than not, people that have designed their lives successfully spend time with other people who have designed their lives. Can you think of one name? I already know the name because you mentioned it a couple times, but one name of someone that you believe has designed their lives successfully. But before you give out the name, you got to help us get him or her on the show.
Okay. My dad would be the guy that has helped me, design my life successfully.
Yeah.
And I think was very good at designing his life successfully, and I think would have definitely a very interesting story.
Yeah, I would love to talk.
He's had a lot more success than I had, and I think his, he didn't have the advantages I had. He had some of them, but he's just someone I can look at and admire, and just in all humility be like, he's accomplished a lot. And I don't want to be comparing. Yeah, I don't want to be comparing myself to him too much, because that'll be a humbling thing. But I can take what I enjoy working with him every day. I can take what he's learned and take what he's taught me, and look at his value system and try to emulate to the best of my abilities.
There you go. Hey Dave, I appreciate your time. Currency. It's been a pleasure. It's been outstanding. This has been another exciting episode of Design Your Life. Listen, as Dave said, we only get one go. As far as we know, make the best of it. If you have the opportunity, if you have that special thing within you that you believe in your heart is yours, it's for you to claim it. and dive into those skills, dive into yourself realistically, like reflect on who you are. And just remember, like we always say, you're a champion. Believe it. Design your life. We'll see you next week for another episode. I'm excited. Talk to you soon. Peace.
You gotta dream it, have you mean it. Embrace the vision, no need to conceal it. Feeling myself, use the colors so bright. Aim for the stars, reach new heights. Align your life, don't let it design you. Chase your dreams, make them all come true. Dance to the rhythm, move with the beat. You're the creator, get up on your feet. Then you gotta dream it, like you mean it. Embrace the vision, no need to conceal it. Dream as the beast, the colors so bright. Aim for the stars, reach new heights. Design your life, don't let it design you. Chase your dreams, make them all come true. Dance to the rhythm, move with the beat. You're the creator, get up on your feet.